But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine, until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth, as it is in heaven.
We're living in a time we're gonna meet Yahweh Shai. You're gonna meet him face to face, which is proof also that we have to be changed. We can't meet the Lord like this. He's gonna change you, he's gonna crown you, and he's gonna toast with you. Sometimes when Akim are among each other, we'll do little small toasts. Brothers may be like La Yasharala, holding up cups. But imagine the Lord himself hosting it, man. And we join in. And I was reading something else, and pretty much they said in order to have what they call a loyal toast, you would use wine. That's the beverage of choice. And once again, our Lord, he's coming back. And we're going to see him with all that power, man. But he's going to extend that power to you.
The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. And if children, then heirs of God, and joint heirs with God. If so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who hath subjected the same, in hope, because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. And not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body.
And once again, when our Lord returns, he's going to wield that power to you elect as well. Once again, he's going to change you, he's going to crown you, and he's going to have a toast with you. A kingly toast, which will basically be a celebration for victory over the beast, victory over this system, victory over Edom Rome coming back, and Edom Rome's mark, which will be that Karagma. So we're going to celebrate with our Lord Yahweh Shai, and honestly, there's no telling what all he has in store for us.
Drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem Kakodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to us younger brothers. And peace and blessings and salutations to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word in truth and in sincerity across the four winds. In the name of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers, the listeners who may have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. All right, and what I want to get into today, dealing with the politics, behind the crucifixion, okay, of Yahweh Shai, because Yahweh Shai, had an extremely, controversial life, okay, from his birth, until the death on the cross. It was a lot of politics, okay, surrounding, Yahweh Shai, okay. So even when you go here and we'll just get straight into it. I got some things pulled up on the chat. We'll get a backdrop, on some history. But so when you go here, let's go to the book, okay, of Matthew. All right. So from his very birth, you know, there was a lot of controversy surrounding his birth. So when you go to the book of Matthew, chapter 2, verse 1, it says, "Now when Yahweh was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east, okay, to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. When Herod the king heard these things, he was troubled, and all right, Jerusalem with him. All right, and they were speaking of the wicked, sellout, okay, around that time, which you had certain of the Sanhedrin, which represented those elders, those Sadducees, those chief priests, the high priests. Okay, you had Pharisees. Okay, you had Herodians. Okay, so you had these different sects of Israelites, which they didn't get along. Okay, but they was all against the coming of Yahweh Shai. Okay, because they was thinking that Yahweh Shai was going to come and tear down the current rulership. And you see, you had Jakes that had it good, all right, in Rome. Mainly the Herodians and the Sadducees. Okay, it says that when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes and the people together, he demanded. Okay, so he got these wicked niggas together, and they went through the precepts. Okay, and they went into Yahweh Shai. you know. So he was threatened, okay, by this king that was prophesied to come. Okay, he felt that his position because Herod, okay, was an Idumean. Okay, his father Antipater or Antipater, okay, was an Idumean. You see, and it was through Mark Antony. When you go back during the time of Mark Antony, okay, Augustus Caesar, okay, Mark Antony placed Herod, okay, as a governor, and then eventually as a king, okay, over Judea. You see, so it was an Edom placed as king, all right, a puppet king by the Romans, all right, because at that time you had the Hasmonean dynasty, that fell, okay, and then you had uh, uh Jake, okay, that was still hard abiding the law. That's where you get the Pharisees from, okay. But then you had Jake that had sold out, all right, and they was the high priest office became a political office, all right, for Rome to control Judea. Okay, so you had Rome put Edomite as king of the Jews. Okay, and then you had Rome, all right, that would you had the high priest, which was Jake. They would be sellouts to Rome. Okay, so at the birth of Yahushua, you had an Edomite as king of Judea. Okay, and you had the high priest, the chief priest. Okay, certain scribes and Pharisees and Herodians, which are all Jakes. Okay, there was Uncle Tom's. All right, to the Roman government. Okay, so this is the upper echelon of Jake. All right, and this imposter Herod plotting, to try to destroy Yahushua at birth. You see, so Yahushua came into a very he came into a very interesting time dealing with Jake, man. Okay, it says that he demanded of them where Yahushua should be born, and they said unto him in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, and thou Bethlehem in the land of Judah, thou, it says, art not the least among the princes of Judah. Okay, For out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. So they was going into what? The scripture, the prophecies. Okay? And you best believe that ain't the only prophecy they went into. We went into this the other day. Okay? A little bit, but let's go into a couple to show you where their mind was at concerning Yahweh, you know, and Herod, he felt threatened. All right, so you go to the book of Micah, chapter 5, all right, in verse 2, it says, But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose going forth have been from old and from everlasting. All right, so they're reading to this impostor Herod, okay, this Idumean, this Edomite, okay, about the prophecies concerning Yahweh Shai being a ruler. So they was thinking, well, he's coming to be a ruler now, okay? And what did that cause? You see? Let's go here. All right, let's go to Jeremiah, and then we'll jump back to the account. All right, this is Jeremiah 23:5 said, Behold, the days come, said the Lord, I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. Okay, so this is what they thought Yahweh Shah was going to be on when he was first born. Okay, they was going through the prophecies, okay, concerning the birth of the Messiah, of this king that will come from the lineage of David. Okay, this is what they thought he was coming to be on. Okay, and Herod in his mind, he was going to stop it. He was going to nip it in the bud. Okay, in his days, Judah shall be saved, for Judah was in captivity at the time. And Israel shall dwell safely, and this is his name whereby he shall be called the Lord our righteousness, man. The northern tribes are already dispersed. They went to the Syrian captivity, from Samaria, and then eventually came over into America. So they was like, well, look, he's going to bring back the tribes. So they knew, like, this is war talk. In order to save his people, well, he would have to conquer their conquerors, man, their captors. Okay, so they were thinking Yahweh Shah was coming, all right, on wartime. You see, so Herod was troubled concerning these prophecies. So let's go back to Matthew 2. Okay, so we're gonna go from his birth, and then we're gonna jump, to the crucifixion. So you go back here, and it says, verse 7 says, Then Herod, when he privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search diligently for the young child. And when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, all right, when they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, a chariot was guiding them to Yahweh. You see those chariots, they look like, moving stars. Okay, till it came and stood over where the young child was. All right, so it hovered, over Yahushua. It says, when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were coming to the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshiped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto them gifts, gold, frankincense, okay, and myrrh. And being warned of the Most High in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. So they never went back, all right, to see Herod, okay. And the spirit had them to where they dipped out on them. So when you read on, it says, and when they departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, out of Egypt, okay, have I called my son. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. Okay, so his thing was, okay, I'm gonna just destroy, okay, every child 2 years and younger. Okay, since the wise men, played me for a fool. All right, I'm gonna just destroy everything 2 years old and under. But see, Howard Shah was already going to Egypt. Okay, so Howard Shah, was preserved. You see, but you see the controversy surrounding the birth of Yahweh Shai. Okay, the politics, it was major politics. Okay, around this time, dealing with King Herod. Okay, and the leadership. Okay, of Israel. Okay, the wicked leadership. Okay, so that was concerning his birth, and when you get to his death, all right, the politics had made it all the way up to, all right, the Rome. Okay, to the Roman government. Okay, so we're gonna jump to the crucifixion. All right, and we're going to go back and forth between the book of Luke, okay, and Saint John. All right, now when you read the book of Saint John, because first, Yahweh Shah was brought before the high priest. He was interrogated by the high priest, and then the high priest took him to Pilate. Okay, and then Pilate sent him to Herod. Okay, and then Herod sent him back to Pilate, and that's where he got the sentence, to be crucified. Okay, so just going into the politics, behind, the crucifixion. All right, and the main two courts was the courts of the Sanhedrin. Okay, the main three courts was the courts of the Sanhedrin. Okay, the courts of Herod and the courts of Pilate. Okay, he had went to all three courts in there one night. So they were just shifting him around. Okay, these different courts. You see, and it was Jake, as we're gonna read, as we're gonna read. Jake was hell bent on him being crucified. Okay, so we're gonna go into it now. When you go to the book of Saint John, you know, because this is why you gotta read the different gospels concerning the same account, because it paints the whole picture. Okay, now when you read this, Saint John 19:1 said, then Pilate took Yahushua and scourged him, and the soldiers planted a crown of thorns. All right, planted a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put him on a purple robe. Now, when you go here to Luke, it lets you know that before, all right, you got the book of Luke, chapter 23. Okay, so you get Luke chapter 23. It says, and the whole multitude of them arose and led him to Pilate. Okay, so this was the chief priest of Sanhedrin. Okay, the high priest, they took him to Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, we found this fellow perverting the nation and forbidding to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is anointed a king. So they couldn't find anything, okay, worthy of putting him to death, okay, within the law. Okay, so they tried to make him guilty of Roman law, okay, by making him to be guilty of treason. So they just lied. Okay, and when we read these things, we have to understand when we get persecuted, it's not going to be fair. Okay, it's going to be certain people that come out of the woodworks. Okay, and They're just gonna lie. Okay? Esau with his AI, he's just gonna lie. You see, but we're gonna be guiltless before Yahweh Bashim al Shah. You know, Yahweh Shah, he was guiltless before the Father. So they couldn't find anything worthy to put him to death according to the law. So they tried to make him be guilty of Roman law. Okay? Said forbidden to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself, all right, is an anointed, all right, is anointed or Hamashiach, all right, a king. So like, look, he's saying he's an anointed king, so he shouldn't have to give tribute. That's what they put words in his mouth. Okay? And when you go back to Luke, you know, Jake, look, when he say he a king and he ain't gotta give tribute to Rome. You know how Jake, you know, lie, then exaggerate with the lie. All right. But when you go here to the book of Luke 20 and 19, it says, and the chief priests and the scribes the same hour sought to lay hands on him, and they feared the people, for they perceived that he had spoken this parable against them. And see, Yahweh Shah was constantly cutting them niggas, man. You know, because they would try to trip him up in front of the crowd, and they'll get cut in front of the crowd, man. Okay? And it says, and they watched him and sent forth spies, all right, which had feigned themselves just men, all right? So they were sending spies, okay? There's nothing new under the sun, man. All right, agents, pretty much sending agents around them, acting like they was, you know, down, okay? It was feigned themselves just men that they might take hold of his words. Okay, let's read this in NLT. Okay. Um, let's go to Luke 20 and 20 says, watching for their opportunity, the leaders sent spies pretending to be honest men. They tried to get Yahweh Shah to say something that could be reported to the Roman governor. So they couldn't accuse him nothing worthy of death in the law, in Israelite law, what they call the law of Moses. So they were like, look, we're going to trip him up, okay, according to the Roman law. You see, there was a lot of politics involved, you know, when it came to Yahweh Shai. Okay. It said they tried to get Yahweh Shai to say something that could be reported to the Roman governor so he would arrest Yahweh Shai. These niggas are wicked, man. You know, these niggas is wicked. Okay. And these niggas are back, man, for their judgment. It says, teacher, they said, we know that you speak and teach what is right and are not influenced by what others think. You teach the way of the Most High truthfully. All right. So these are agents. Okay. Pretending like, okay, they're believers, they're humble. Okay. Now tell us, is it right for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not? He saw through their trickery and said, show me a Roman coin whose picture and title are stamped on it. Caesar's, they replied. Well, then, he said, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and give to the Most High what belongs to the Most High. So he never, all right, teached about not paying your taxes. He never teached about rebellion against the Roman government. Okay? But Jake, all right, they just got to the point they were so, you know, infuriated with Yahweh Shah that they just lied, man. Okay? And they made, all right, him saying, okay, that he was the son of the Most High, which this son was prophesied to be a king, which it wasn't. He wasn't speaking of being a king in this time, okay? Because he came to be what, a sacrifice, all right? But he's coming to be King of Kings now, okay? It says, and give to the Most High what belongs to the Most High. So he never, you know, taught, okay, to rebel against Roman government, okay? Verse 26. So they failed to trap him by what he said in front of the people. Instead, they were amazed by his answer and they became silent, man. So they were cut again. Even by trying to trip him up in Roman law, they was cut again. Okay. So now when you go back, okay, to the book of Luke 23, okay, it's probably the most descriptive one. in the book of Luke. So you go back in the book of Luke, all right, 23. Keep it in NLT and see. All right. Here's Luke 23 and 1. It said, then the entire council, okay, the Sanhedrin, took Yahushua to Pilate. All right. So the Sanhedrin was about 70, elders. Okay. And there was the Sadducees, all right, high priests, chief priests, and Pharisees. Okay. And then the entire council took Yahushua to Pilate, the Roman governor. They began to state their case. This man has been leading our people astray by telling them not to pay their taxes to the Roman government and by claiming he is the Messiah, a king. Okay, so they're telling Pilate, like, look, this is treason what he's on, man. He's on treason. Put him to death. So Pilate asked him, are you the king of the Jews? Yahushua replied, you have said it. Pilate turned to the leading priests and to the crowd and said, I find nothing wrong with this man. Okay, then they began to insist, but he is causing riots by his teaching wherever he goes, all over Judea, from Galilee to Jerusalem. You see that? So now they're trying to accuse him of what? Sedition. Let's get this word sedition. Okay. Now they want to charge him with tradition. So they're trying to get him crucified based on Roman law. Okay. You see? So when you go to here, and best believe we're gonna be we gotta drink of that cup. We're gonna be charged with these things, man. Okay, so they were like, look, everywhere he goes, he's causing an uproar. They did that with Apostle Paul. We're gonna get that account as well, dealing with Apostle Paul. All right, it says sedition is conduct such as speech or action that incites rebellion or insurrection against the established government or authority. So they were trying to get Yahushua charged by Roman law for sedition. Okay, it often involves advocating for the violent overthrow of the government, hindering the execution of its laws, or opposing its authority by force. Okay, and Yahushua was not guilty of that. Okay, but Jake was reaching. All right, because they wanted the death penalty, man, for Yahushua. Okay, it says while sedition can involve expressing critical opinions, it typically goes beyond mere dissent and involves the intent to create actual disorder or violence against the government. Okay, and Yahushua was not guilty of that. Okay, but this is the charges that Jake was pushing on, trying to make stick to him. You see? So when you go here, because they did the Apostle Paul the same way as the book of Acts. Let me see. Try to find it. And it's very relevant, for the times that we're in. Okay. Let me see. All right. Let's see what we got. It's just the book of Acts. Yeah, this Acts. The niggas on the same thing, with Apostle Paul, trying to get him charged, okay, by Roman authority, It's in Acts 24:1. It says, and after 5 days, Ananias, the high priest, descending with the elders and with a certain orator named Tertullus, who informed the governor against Paul. So these wicked niggas. So this is after, okay, Caiaphas, and you have another high priest, Ananias. All right, another wicked nigga. Because the Israelite leadership, they became just puppets of Rome. Their whole thing was to keep Judea in check. All right, because the Roman government knew, that hey, them Jews would get roused up. Okay, and they would be tough to deal with. Even when you go into what they call the Roman Jew Wars. All right, what they call it Ish. Okay, but it wasn't Ish. All right, what they call the Roman uh Jew Wars. All right, Jake was giving the Romans hell. You know, they had to go get Vespasian out of retirement when Jake, you know, those zealots, you know, Sakari and certain other sects, you know, when they went to war against the Romans, you know, they was giving the Romans hell for a time. Okay, they had to go get Vespasian, and eventually, you know, Jake got trampled. Okay, but the whole thing of the of the of the Sanhedrin, okay, mainly the elite class of the Sanhedrin, you know, they was being tasked, okay, with keeping Jake in check. All right, cause they ain't want to deal with them. Like, look, these, you know, they rebellions be different, you know. So that was their whole thing. That's why uh Caiaphas was like, look, if everyone begins to believe on him, the Romans gonna come take our place, you know, because they hold duty, and the reason why Rome set them up and allowed them to, you know, have all these perks and revenue under the Roman Empire, because they was tasked with keeping Jake, you know, you know, keeping them docile and obedient to Rome. You know, it says, and when he was called forth, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying that by thee we enjoy great quietness. So he's kissing Felix' ass. This is a Edomite. Okay, I believe Felix was a governor. You know, maybe, you know. Let's look it up real quick. It says, and when he was called forth, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying, seeing that by thee we enjoy great quietness, and that very worthy deeds are done unto this nation by thy providence. We accept it always and in all places, most noble Felix, with all thankfulness, man. So this is Jake, you know, cooning, man. All right. And these niggas finna coon again for Esau, man. All right. You can see these niggas they gonna coon their ass off for Trump. All right, for Nero. Okay. So Felix, all right, was with Felix in the Hebrew, meaning the Greek, you know. So what, he was a Roman uh procurator, you know, which is like a governor, all right, of Judea, appointed by the Emperor Claudius in AD 53. He ruled the province in a mean, cruel, and pro, pro profligate manner. Okay, and these niggas were kissing his ass, man. You know, cause Jake didn't give a damn about uh you know, their people. They just was worried about their position and their status on the Rome. All right, it said Paul was brought before Felix at Caesarea. He was reprimanded. All right, it says he was remanded, like in prison, and kept there 2 years in hopes of extorting money for him. Okay, it says Felix wicked as hell, man. It says at the end of that time, all right, Porcius Fetus was appointed to supersede Felix, who, on his return to Rome, was accused by the Jews in Caesarea and would have suffered the penalty due to his atrocities had not his brother Pilate prevailed with the Emperor Nero, all right, your boy Nero, he came to Caesar after Claudius, all right, to spare him. Okay, so you know, he was a governor, you know, that's another rabbit hole in history, but he was just a governor, okay, that Jake, you know, so he was like another pilot, this guy Felix, okay, and Jake was crying to him, you know, about Paul, you know, just like them niggas cried to Pilate about Yahushua. All right, Acts 24:4 says, notwithstanding, all right, that I be no further tedious unto thee, I pray thee that thou wouldest hear us of thy clemency a few words. For we have found this man a pestilent fellow, a mover of sedition. You see that? a move of sedition. All right. Then Yahushua said what? That we will have to drink of that cup. So just as they accused, okay, Yahushua sedition, they was accusing the Apostle Paul. Okay, and they accused the other apostles as well. Okay, that's that because they had to get permission from Roman, all right, from the Roman government to put the apostles to death. Okay, and this was one of the main charges they would use. Okay, because Rome was full of idolatry. Because Rome was anti-Messiah. Okay, and as Jake was, repenting, coming back, to righteousness. Okay, they put down those Roman gods. Okay, the worship of Caesar and all the madness, and they became faithful to Yahweh Bashim Al Shai. So the leadership of Jake, the Sanhedrin, okay, they began to twist it as sedition and treason. Okay, Nero, he was able to twist it, okay, as what? Sedition and treason when he burnt down Rome. Okay, and he got there from niggas, man. Niggas was doing that way before he was for Nero was Caesar, man. It said, "For we have found this man a pestilent fellow and a mover of sedition among all the Jews throughout the world." You see, and a leader of the sect of the Nazarenes, man. So they wanted Apostle Paul, all right, to be sentenced to death, man. Okay, niggas, man, and these niggas are back today. Okay, and you gonna see, you know. And that's why we gotta understand what we're a part of, man. All right, it's gonna be a lot of plot twists, as this thing continues to play out. Okay. So let's get this in the book of Luke 23 and 3. I'll start back at 4. It says, Pilate turned to the leading priests and to the crowd and said, I found nothing wrong with this man. Said then they became insistent, all right, but he is causing riots by his teaching wherever he goes, all over Judea and from Galilee to Jerusalem. All right. So you look at all these jakes on TikTok that's complaining about the Hebrew Israelites. Okay, you don't think, that these niggas gonna, make a major case. Okay, when Esau pushes his smear propaganda on Yahushua, his smear campaign. Okay, it says, oh, he is a Galilean. So now Pilate finds out that he's a Galilean. Pilate asked, when they said that he was, Pilate sent him to Herod Antipas because Galilee was under Herod's jurisdiction, and Herod happened to be in Jerusalem at the time. So now, all right, and the reason why he was in Jerusalem because it was time for the Passover. All right, and that nigga was an imposter. Yeah, eat him. All right, trying to keep the Passover, man. Because you read in the KJV, and it lets you know Yahushua fulfilled the prophecy of the Passover lamb. Because he was crucified during the time it was time to kill the lamb for the Passover. Okay, uh, so now when you go to Luke 23:8, it says, and when Herod saw Yahushua, he was exceeding glad, for he was desirous to see him a long season, because he had heard many things of him. All right, and he had hope to have seen some miracles done by him. Okay, then he questioned him. All right, then he questioned him in many words, but he answered him nothing. So Herod, he was just talking, Yahushua ear off, because even Herod, he didn't have the authority to put Yahushua to death neither. That order had to come from Pilate, okay, which was what the representation of the Roman government. Okay, It says, and the chief priests and scribes stood and vehemently accused him. So why Pilate is asking them questions? Okay, Howard Shai is not saying nothing. These niggas in the background just throwing accusations, man. These niggas was tripping. Okay. It says, and Herod and his men of war set him at naught and mocked him and arrayed him in a gorgeous robe and sent him again to Pilate. So they made mockery, okay, of Yahweh Shai, and then they sent him back to Pilate, you know. So Herod didn't get nothing out of Yahweh Shai, okay, and he didn't come up with a verdict. He sent him back to Pilate, you know, still needing to be judged, okay. Now, Pilate, when you go here, okay, then we're gonna go into the chat. You know, Pilate is gonna try to play innocent, but Pilate had all the authority, so he couldn't be innocent. And the Lord set him up like that. All right. So when Yahweh Shah come with that vengeance on Edom and you niggas, man, it's gonna be rightfully so. Okay. So you go back to the book of St. John. All right. St. John chapter 19. All right, this is a count. All right, so this is after he's been sent back to Pilate from Herod. Okay, because the book of John doesn't mention him, you know, being sent to Herod. All right, so he comes back, you know, after he's made mockery of, okay, by Herod. Then Pilate took Yahushua, St. John 19:1, and scourged him, and the soldiers platted a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put him on a purple robe and said, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they smote him with their hands. Pilate therefore went forth again and said unto them, Behold, I bring him forth to you, that ye may know that I find no fault in him. But wait a minute, you find no fault in him, but you're letting these people put a crown of thorns on his head, okay? And then slapping him around, punching him, okay? You see? And it says, then came Yahweh Shai forth wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate said unto them, Behold, okay, the man. When the chief priest therefore and the officers saw him, they cried out, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. Pilate said unto them, Take ye him and crucify him, for I find no fault in him. The Jews answered, We have a law, and by our law he ought to die, because he made, all right, himself the son of the Most High, which there wasn't a lie. So there all these are false accusations, man. Okay? They're just lying, man. And this is why the blood of Yahweh Shai, you know, it was a sacrifice, but then it was also a murder. Okay? Because the Most High was the Most High, you know, he does a lot of things in one motion. You see, the Heavenly Father, you know, he punishes, okay, and he condemns and he rewards all in one motion, the way that he moves. Because guess what? Yahweh Shai is finna be rewarded for doing this. You know, he's gonna get everything. Okay. You see, the elect are gonna be covered, okay, by Yahweh Shai being this sacrifice. Okay, but these wicked niggas and these Edomites, okay, the Roman Empire, which is back today, America, NATO, and EU, guess what? They're condemned by this act. You know, so this act was a sacrifice, okay, for the elect, okay, but it was a murder attributed to the Romans, okay, and Jake, man. You know, wicked niggas, man. You see? So it says, when Pilate therefore heard that saying, he was the more afraid, and he went again into the judgment hall and said to Yahushua, Whence art thou? But Yahushua gave no answer. Then said Pilate unto him, Speakest thou not unto me? Knowest thou not that I have power, okay, to crucify thee and have power to release thee. Okay, so he condemned himself by showing Pilate had the most authority, okay, in this situation. So he had power to release him and crucify him. Okay, so Yahweh Shai can only be crucified, okay, at the approval, okay, of Pilate. Or he could have been released. Okay, but we know it wasn't meant for him to be released. Okay, so the Heavenly Father, he put everybody in the trick bag, and he put the elect in the position, all right, for the victory. And he put everybody else in the trick bag to be condemned. Okay? It says, How shall I answer? Thou couldst have no power at all against me except it were given thee from above. So Yahweh Shai, like, look, the power you got, you know, pretty much Yahweh Shai would tell this nigga, don't get beside yourself. Okay? The power you got come from above, come from the Father. All right? Therefore, okay, he that delivered me unto thee have the greatest sin. Okay? Speaking of Jake, man. Okay, so that blood, okay, the innocent blood of Yahushua that was condemned to death, okay, by the Roman government and niggas, okay, well, guess what? Yahushua, he's coming to avenge that. Okay? That's why I say those who pierce me, okay, shall see him. You know, because what Jacob tell you, you got to see me. You know? So hey, guess what? The new Rome got to see Yahushua. That's why we'll get it. But first, let's just go into a little history, you know. And so I pray that this is making sense. I'm trying not to be all over the place. All right. So you go to the chat. So I asked it, did Pilate have the most authority, okay, in the trial of Yahushua? Okay. So hold on. I got a few of them pulled up so I can let me see. Oh, it's all the same. Let me see. Might mean this. Give me a second. Got a few of them pulled up, so it gotta be this one. All right. So I asked it, did Pilate have the most authority, okay, in the trial of Yahushua? He said, excellent question, and one that touches both Roman law, okay, and the Israelite religious authority at the time of Yahushua's trial. Let's unpack it carefully. Pilate's position and authority. Pontius Pilate, okay, was the Roman governor, prefect, or procurator, all right, of Judea under Emperor Tiberius around 2636 AD. As governor, okay, Pilate, so Yahweh was crucified during the time of Tiberius. Okay, it says as governor, Pilate represented the Roman imperial authority in Judea, controlled civil administration, military power, and judicial sentencing, including the power of capital punishment or the right of the sword. Answer only to Rome, all right, not to the Israelite Sanhedrin. So yes, Pilate had the legal authority to release or execute Yahushua, which we just read in St. John, all right, 19 and 10. Okay. Do you not know, St. John 19 and 10, do you not know that I have authority to release you, all right, and authority to crucify you, all right, because he was a representation of Rome's imperial power over Judea. It said, although Pilate was the highest civil authority in the region, his power was politically constrained. Okay, so the Lord set it up to where Pilate was in, he was in political straits. Okay, during the trial of Yahushua, so it was pretty much forced. Okay, it says the leaders of the Jews, the Sanhedrins, could not execute anyone under Roman occupation. Okay, you read St. John 18:31. It goes into it. It says, so they brought Yahweh to Pilate, but they pressured Pilate by threatening to report him to Caesar. All right, so St. John 19:12. Matter of fact, when you read it, let me see. Let's pull it up. So when Pilate, he was like, I'm gonna release him. You see, these niggas, man. All right, so when you read it, St. John 19:12, it says, and from thenceforth Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, saying, okay, if thou let this man go, thou art not Caesar's friend. Whosoever maketh himself a king speaketh, okay, against Caesar. Okay, so what was Jake doing? When you read the chat by saying that, okay, it says, but they pressured Pilate by threatening to report him to Caesar. Pilate had already faced complaints and uprising from the Jews before, okay, and another scandal could cost him his post or his life, okay? So he was already getting complaints, okay, and you had particular uprisings, all right, from Jake, okay? So he was already on shaky ground as governor, so if this complaint about Yahushua would have made it to Caesar, he could have been removed from his post, okay, or even worse, put to death. You see, it says, so even though Pilate had the legal right to release Yahushua, he lacked the political courage to do so. You see, because he knew, okay, they did deliver him to me because for envy. He knew them niggas was tripping, okay, but his hands were tied politically, and even his neck was on the line. It says he symbolically washed his hands, trying to avoid responsibility, but the final authorization of the execution still rested with him, so he couldn't escape, okay, being guilty of that blood, okay, as he represented, all right, Rome's imperial power, that blood on Rome, okay, and guess who's in power today? Even Rome, all right, ain't no coincidence. You see, it says the religious authority involved, all right, the Sanhedrin judged Yahushua on religion grounds claiming blasphemy, but only Rome could enforce the death sentence. Thus, the Sanhedrin framed the charges politically, uh, accusing of Yahushua of claiming kingship and rebellion against Caesar, so Pilate would see him as a threat to the Roman order. Okay, expect for us to have the same charges, brothers. Okay, expect for us to have those same charges. All right, when dealing in these times, man, when that persecution comes. All right, they're gonna frame it as if we're a threat to the American government, man. Okay, don't be surprised. All right, so let's go here and see. This is why they had to reach, and these people finna reach again. All right, so let's go here. So that's why the prophecy of Yahweh Shai coming back now should make sense, more sense. I know it makes more sense, for me as all right. When Yahweh Shai comes back, guess what? It says Isaiah 63:1. Who is that coming from Edom with dyed garments from Basra? This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Okay, so Yahweh Shai is coming directly to Edom when he comes back, man. Okay, traveling what? In the greatness of his strength. See, he's coming back on that chariot, okay, with the heavenly host with him, man. Now he's coming back from that war. Okay? Now what you devils thought it was back then, going back to Herod killing, those Hebrew boys, all right, those male childs, 2 years and younger, paranoid. See, now is the time to be paranoid. Okay, which these devils are. They weird in their counsel. It says, wherefore art thou red in thine apparel, thy garments like him that treadeth in the wine fat. Yeah, see, he came to shed his own blood the first time. Okay, now he's coming, all right, to shed blood of his enemies. Okay, beginning with Edom, Rome, that's been revived in the earth. Okay, it says, I have trodden the winepress alone, and of the people there was none with me, for I will tread them in my anger and trample them in my fury, and their blood shall be sprinkled upon my garments, and I will stain all my raiment. For the day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeem is come. So the Lord got that vengeance on his mind. You see? You go into everything that was done to him, and the politics and the lies and the torment, the mockery, that's fresh on his mind. Okay? But he's going to redeem those, all right, that stay faithful unto him. The elect. Okay? That's why you go here. You see, hey, he's talking to Edom. When you go through these prophecies, hey, he's talking to Edom. Okay? You go to Isaiah 47, and Isaiah 63 calls out Edom directly. All right? Isaiah 47 and 1 says, come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon, which is speaking of America. Okay? Which is the centerpiece of this, okay, this Rome revived in the earth, the Roman Empire revived in the earth. It says, sit on the ground, there is no throne, O daughter of Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate, man. America is going to be greatly promoted in the earth. And it's going to be Yahweh Shai that does it. Take the millstones and grind meal, uncover thy locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the river. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, which is happening now. They're being exposed. Yeah, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. Okay? He's talking to these Edomites, man. Okay? And you 2/3 niggas too, man. Because he came the first time, he came as a man, as that lamb, to be that sacrifice. He had to go to the slaughter with no fight. Okay? But when he comes back, he's not going to meet you as a man. He's coming back as a power. Okay? Because now he's coming for what y'all was terrified of over 2,000 years ago. Now he's coming with that energy. You see? So that's why. All right. Revelation 12. Let's get there. Revelation 12. All right. And 7, it says, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels and prevailed not. All right. Michael represents, the heavenly host, which is going to be what? Under the command of Yahweh Shai. Okay. And this dragon represents what? The new Roman Empire of this time. America, NATO, and the EU, which they're going to be at the forefront of the rest of these heathens that's going to come against the second coming of Yahushua. Okay, it says, and prevailed not, neither was their place found anymore in heaven, okay, with their rulership, okay, and their militaries are going to be obliterated out the atmosphere, man. Okay, and it says, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him, man. Okay, Yahweh Shai is coming to take Rome down this time. Okay, because Esau, he rules in the spirit of Satan. He's the devil, the deceiver. Okay, and he has that same spirit of the serpent, that witchcraft and trickery and deception. Okay, well, Yahweh Shai, he's coming, all right, to tear this whole kingdom down, man. Okay, and in the day of vengeance in his heart for all that was done to him and all that was done to his people. Okay, it says, and I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and the strength, all right, and the kingdom of our power and the power of his anointed. For the accuser of our brother is cast down, which accused them before our power day and night. Okay, so the accuser, which is Esau, Edom, okay, is finna be cast down. Okay, and there's a great vengeance. Yahweh Shai is finna take in the earth, man. All right, and you 2/3 niggas, you finna get that smoke too. You know, so yeah, that's the point. You know, just wanted to get into that. You know, to give a backdrop on what was going on politically. Okay, um, during the time of the crucifixion. So Lord will, you know, you brothers, all right, and your sister was edified once again. I'm gonna give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakadash, you know, double honors to the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers, and peace and blessings, salutations to the whole Shalom.